Hello, welcome to a special edition of The State We're In. I'm Jim Madigan. With us, the three candidates for the January 19th special election for the United States Senate. They are Republican candidate, State Senator Scott Brown, Democratic candidate, Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley, and independent candidate Joseph L. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy is a vice president for information technology for a major corporation in Boston. He is a libertarian, but he is running as an independent. This will not be a formal debate in the usual sense you might think of it. No real strict time limits for candidates' responses, comments, rebuttals. We're really hoping for kind of a good discussion here of the issues that I will raise through the next hour. At the end, we will allow each candidate 2 minutes to sum up their case in a closing statement. Now, we literally drew names out of an old cigar box we found to determine the order the candidates will respond both at the end and the closing statements. And first now to the questions I'll pose. As it turns out, Mr. Kennedy will get to speak first on the first question. First, let me say to all of you, thank you very much for coming and spending some time with us. We're glad to have you here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Our pleasure. National unemployment numbers new out this Friday. Unemployment holds at 10%, but we're told there's a net loss of about 85,000 jobs nationwide. I'm going to ask you for your interpretation on this. Does it mean, since we're holding at the same number as we were a month ago, that things are starting to stabilize, level off, the economy's improving, the stimulus is working, or do you see us stalled? And if so, what should we do that we're not doing? What should we be doing differently? Mr. Kennedy.
Well, I think not only are we stalled, but if you take a look at that same report, interesting numbers that came out in that report stated that more and more people had given up looking for work. And that is one of the worst things that you can see in an economy, when people actually start to say, hey, not only am I going to stop, having faith in the future, but I'm going to stop looking for a job. And those numbers aren't reported in that number, that 10% number that you're talking about. So not only are we stalled, but things are getting worse. And the reason why they're getting worse is because we haven't started doing what we need to do to put the economy back rolling again, which is cut spending dramatically. Right now, all we're doing is we're taking money from the private sector via taxes, and we're giving it to the public sector via bailouts and stimulus plans, and that doesn't work. All that is doing is mixing the pie, and you're not going to create new jobs in the private sector, which is what is needed to stimulate the economy, by doing that type of economic movement of money.
Very good. Ms. Coakley, your reaction to today's numbers?
Well, a little over a year ago, we were on the edge of what would have been the worst disaster since the Great Depression, probably is still, although we made efforts to try and turn the economy around, mitigate that damage based upon economic policies from the past administration that caused this failure. And as we've gone through this, people said at the time, it is going to be a tough haul coming out of this. Let's stop where we're going, let's mitigate the damage, and let's see what we can do in the next 15 months. In some ways, the news could be worse. And I agree that people's expectation was that it might go down. The fact that it's holding says a couple of things, and you can look at the glass half full or half empty, but it says we still have a lot more work to do. And to make sure that we are able to get the economy moving again, we do need to look at how we are going to do that with getting credit moving again to small businesses, to make sure that we have a tax policy that takes the squeeze off the middle class and gets folks working and trained. And we are starting to do that. We can do that. Luckily, our numbers are a little lower in Massachusetts, so we can lead the way on that. But I think we still have a lot of work to do.
Mr. Brown.
Jim, thanks for that question. We're 85,000 jobs is not holding the line. We've lost 85,000 more jobs, and this is a race about differences, and we're in a very tough economic situation, as you know, and there's plenty of blame to go around. This is a race between Martha Coakley and me, and you're talking about somebody who wants to lower taxes and lower spending versus somebody who's pushing for $2.1 trillion of extra taxes, is in favor of a second stimulus bill, and we can afford it right now. We're in a time where people need more money in their pockets, and I've called for a JFK-style across-the-board tax cut, including a reduction in payroll taxes, to make sure we put more money in people's pockets to create jobs and stimulate the economy. That's the thing we need to do right now. We can't put more and more regulation on businesses and expect them to come out and want to hire and expand. For example, we have the health care proposal, which is not good for Massachusetts, going to cost Massachusetts jobs. We've got the cap-and-trade scheme, which is going to put businesses out of business. I was at Polar Beverages out in Worcester. I was out here in in Holyoke and Springfield, and you're talking extra money in a time when people can't afford it. So this is a race about differences, and I'm ready to go down there and hold the line on spending, reduce taxes, and try to find a different answer, because this one isn't working.
I'm going to carry this discussion on a bit, because I bet, Ms. Coakley, you'd probably like to respond to some of what was said there.
Sure. Well, my question, Scott, would be then, did you not agree with the TARP and this first stimulus? And if you didn't, are you willing to send that money back that your district got in the first stimulus back to Washington?
Well, thank you. No, I did not agree with the first stimulus because it hasn't created one new job. And as you know, as Attorney General, because you are supposed to help oversee the money, we're 49th out of 50 actually releasing the money. It's still up in the State House. So that money hasn't actually worked and hasn't gotten out and doing those shovel-ready projects. For example, if we want to use the money now, what I would do is I would recall that money and actually use it to rebuild the infrastructure so we have long-lasting effects and actually create jobs. The TARP had a certain benefit to it. I would have targeted a little bit more and not just a no-strings-attached situation, and I would have allowed certainly to help but not pay out the huge bonuses that that banks and others are getting. But, you know, I'm glad you brought that up because there are so many differences between you and me when it comes to taxation, when it comes to spending. One of your, recently in the debate you did, you said that in order to get out of this deficit, we need taxes to go up. I disagree. I think we need taxes to go down.
If I can, Jim, that's inaccurate, and you know that that's taken out of context. In that time, what I talked about was the need to get people back to work so tax revenues could go up. I misspoke, but it's clear in the context of what I meant. So you are saying you'd take the money that your district got in Massachusetts for stimulus money and send it back to Washington?
No, that's not what I said at all.
Well, then you agree with the first stimulus.
We capture the money that hasn't been released. With 49th out of 50, Martha, as you know, we have not released that money.
Except that will be released, and it's planned to be.
The money in my
district. We've held the line in Massachusetts on that.
Held the line in what?
On losing jobs. We've kept jobs in cities and towns, with police, with fire, with teachers, as a result of that. And that was also what that first stimulus was about. It was preventing losing jobs.
No, it was to create jobs and get shovel-ready projects. The governor, as you know, asked every community for shovel-ready projects. The only money that's gone out is to backfill municipal budgets. When it goes right down to actually creating jobs in Massachusetts, it hasn't worked. I wouldn't support another stimulus. You would.
I didn't say that. I never said I would. I said we'd like to see what the first one works, and the first one worked to prevent the loss of jobs, and it was, as the President said, to prevent losing jobs and to grow jobs.
We've still lost many jobs in Massachusetts, so it hasn't worked. It hasn't created one job.
I want to give Mr. Kennedy a chance to say something.
I find the conversation amusing because I'm a student of history, and we need to look at history if we want to get ourselves out of this. The reality is very, very simple. Every single dollar of tax revenue that comes from any individual in the state of Massachusetts that goes up to the federal government, only 80 cents comes back, and that includes the bailouts recently, that includes historically over time. So we are losers as a state. Now, if we lived in New Mexico, for every dollar that went up, $2.05.